I never thought I'd end up as the other man in someone's marriage. If you met me in real life, you'd never peg me as the type to chase after married women. I've always had a clear rule. If I see a wedding ring, I don't even go there. No excuses, no exceptions. Someone else's family is off limits, but life has a way of throwing you into storms you never planned for. And sometimes, all it takes is one Friday night. That week had been brutal. Back-to-back meetings, deadlines breathing down my neck, endless reports piling up on my desk. I felt like my brain was fried. By the time Friday evening rolled around, I just wanted to shut it all off. My co-worker, let's call him Mike, slapped me on the shoulder and said, "Dude, you look like death. Let's go grab a couple beers. Blow off some steam." The idea of heading home to an empty apartment sounded depressing. So I agreed. We picked a small bar not far from work. Not the wild, bass-thumping, dance until 2 a.m. kind of place. More like a cozy bar with warm lighting, a long wooden counter, and pop music playing just loud enough to keep things lively without drowning out conversation. The second we walked in, I felt the usual Friday night buzz in the air, people laughing, clinking glasses, that faint mix of beer and perfume hanging in the room. Mike ordered us drinks and, true to his extroverted self, immediately struck up a conversation with a group of women sitting nearby. I wasn't really trying to join in. I laughed politely, chimed in here and there, but honestly, I was just there to relax. And then she walked over. At first, she didn't seem like the loudest or flashiest of her friends, but her presence was magnetic. A simple black dress, nothing over the top, but it fit her in a way that made you notice. Her skin seemed to glow under the amber lights, and her lips curved into this subtle half-smile that felt both mysterious and inviting. When her eyes met mine, I swear it was like a small electric current shot through me, and the next thing I knew, she was sliding into the empty seat right next to me. We started talking. Nothing groundbreaking at first, what we did for work, hobbies, the usual small talk, but she had this way about her, confident without being cocky, soft-spoken yet sharp. Every answer she gave just made me want to ask another question. And of course, I did my usual check. My eyes flicked to her left hand. No ring, no tan line where a ring might have been. Just long, clean fingers with a neutral polish. I felt a wave of relief. She was single, or at least, that's what every sign told me. Her friends didn't act weird about it either. If anything, they seemed happy, exchanging smiles and nudges like they were rooting for her. Before I knew it, the night had slipped away. The bar was thinning out, and Mike was already busy entertaining himself with the rest of the group. Meanwhile, she and I were in our own little world, tucked into the corner of the bar, talking like we'd known each other for more than just a couple of hours when we finally stepped outside. The chill of the autumn air hit me, sobering me up just enough to realize where this was heading. I don't remember which one of us suggested it, but we ended up heading back to my apartment. And that night, well, I won't spell out the details, but let's just say it wasn't awkward or clumsy. It wasn't the kind of one-night stand where you wake up regretting it. It was intense, passionate, like two people letting go of every ounce of stress, every inhibition, every unspoken longing they'd been carrying around. There was something about the way she moved, the way she kissed me, that didn't feel like just for fun. It felt desperate, like she was trying to escape something, to lose herself in the moment. When the storm finally quieted down, I lay there in the half-dark, watching her silhouette against the window, and for a split second, I thought I caught a sadness in her, a heaviness she wasn't saying out loud. But I didn't ask. I didn't want to ruin the fragile silence that hung between us. The next morning, I expected her to slip out quickly, like most people do after a random hookup. Instead, she got up calmly, tied her hair back, and smiled at me. A smile that made me forget, for a moment, that this was supposed to be casual. Before she left, she asked for my number. I hesitated, thought this was a one-night thing, but there was something in the way she looked at me, almost playful, almost daring, that made me hand it over. "I'll text you later," she said, before walking out with that same half-dash smile. The door clicked shut. I stood there, caught between confusion and anticipation. I told myself it was just a fun night, nothing more. But when my phone buzzed that afternoon with her name on the screen, I realized something had already shifted, and that was the beginning of everything. The next morning, I woke up feeling surprisingly clear-headed for a Saturday. Normally, after a late night out, I'd be dragging myself out of bed, nursing a hangover, and regretting at least half of the decisions I made. But this time was different. Instead of regret, there was this strange sense of curiosity lingering in me. I couldn't stop thinking about Herth, this woman who had sat next to me at the bar, who talked to me like we had known each other longer than a couple of hours, who left my apartment with a smile on her face and my number saved in her phone. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail from the night before. Her laugh, the way her eyes locked onto mine like I was the only person in the room, and the way she didn't hesitate when she asked for my number. I wasn't used to that kind of confidence. Most hookups I'd had before ended with awkward goodbyes, rushed exits, and just maybe a half-hearted text later in the week. But with her, it felt deliberate, like she knew what she wanted. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed. It was her. Just a simple text. "Last night was fun. Hope you're not too hungover." I caught myself smiling like an idiot. It was the kind of message that didn't demand a reply, but also made it impossible not to. So I responded, and just like that, we started talking. At first, it was light. We joked about the scene at the bar, about the drunk guy who tried to hit on her friend and got shot down so hard he nearly spilled his beer. We talked about work, about how late nights drain you to the bone, but somehow Friday drinks always feel worth it. The conversation was easy, effortless, even. No pressure, no weird pauses, just two people killing time, connecting over small things. Over the next 2 weeks, those texts turned into a rhythm. She'd message me during her lunch break, and I'd respond between meetings. At night, when I got home, we'd pick up the thread again, diving a little deeper. She told me about the kind of books she liked, the music she listened to when she cooked, and how she hated Sundays because they felt like a countdown to Monday. I shared pieces of my life, the stress of deadlines, how I'd taken up running to clear my head, the fact that I usually spent weekends trying to balance between rest and not wasting time. It was nice, too nice. Maybe .c. I've had casual flings before, but this one felt like it was steering into something more. There wasn't anything sexual in the texts. We didn't swap photos. We didn't sext. It was just conversations, the kind you'd expect if you were actually dating someone. And that's what threw me off. Why would she keep reaching out if it was just a one-time thing? When she suggested meeting up again, I didn't hesitate. She asked if I wanted to grab drinks at the same bar, and I thought, sure, why not? Familiar territory, no pressure, just two adults having a good time. That Friday, I got to the bar a little early. I ordered a beer, scanned the room, and waited. When she walked in, I felt that same pull I had the first night. She looked effortlessly good jeans, a simple top, nothing flashy. But it wasn't about the clothes. It was the confidence, the way she carried herself, the way she smiled when she saw me. We sat down, ordered a couple of drinks, and the conversation flowed as easily as our beers. We laughed, teased each other, and for a while, it felt like the world outside didn't exist. But then, halfway through her second drink, she leaned in and asked, almost casually, "So, want to come back to my place?" I didn't even think twice. I just said yes. The ride over was a blur of anticipation. I remember glancing at her in the passenger seat, wondering why this felt different, why I felt nervous in a way I hadn't in years. When we pulled up to her place, I parked the car and followed her inside. At first glance, everything seemed normal, cozy even. A few candles on the counter, books stacked neatly on a shelf, a faint smell of vanilla in the air. But then I noticed it. A man's coat hanging near the door. A pair of men's shoes sitting neatly on the mat. I froze for a second, my brain trying to make sense of it. Maybe it's a roommate, I thought. Or a brother, a cousin. Something that explained why a grown man's belongings were sitting in her entryway. But then my eyes drifted to the wall. Family photos. Smiling faces. Kids, maybe nieces or nephews. And her front and center. But no man. Not one photo showed her with a guy. That tiny detail was enough to quiet the alarm. Bells in my head for the moment. She led me toward the bedroom, and I followed, still pushing down that unease. When she slipped into the bathroom to freshen up, I let my eyes wander, and that's when I saw it. Her closet door was open. Inside, row after row of men's clothes hung neatly, taking up half the space. Dress shirts, jackets, jeans. Not just a hoodie left behind after a hookup. This was someone's life. This was a man's home too. My stomach dropped. The panic hit all at once. I grabbed my phone, pretended to answer a work call, and stumbled out with some half-fast apology. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. By the time I got in my car, reality was crashing down. There was no denying it anymore. She wasn't single. She wasn't separated. She was married. And I had just stepped into the middle of it, driving home that night. Every thought you can imagine raced through my head. Anger, guilt, shock, even betrayal, though I had no right to feel betrayed. But mostly, there was this heavy weight in my chest, because now I knew. And once you know, you can't unknow. That night, driving home, my chest felt like it was caving in. The road blurred under my headlights, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. Every little detail from her house played on repeat in my head. The men's coat hanging near the door, the shoes neatly lined up on the mat, and that closet filled to the brim with men's clothes. Not just a few items someone left behind. No, that was a life. A man's life. And the truth hit me like a punch I wasn't ready for. She wasn't single. She wasn't separated. She was married. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. A cold chill ran down my spine, the kind that makes your whole body tense like you're in danger. Except the danger wasn't physical, it was moral. I felt like I had been dragged into someone else's mess, someone else's betrayal. I kept asking myself, how could I not see it? I replayed the first night at the bar in my head. Her leaning close, laughing at my jokes, asking for my number like she had nothing to hide. The morning after, she left my apartment smiling, promising to text me. There was no hesitation, no guilt. If she was married, she was damn good at pretending otherwise. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, every nerve in my body buzzing with unease. Questions tore through me like blades. Why did she pick me? Was I just some random distraction? If I hadn't noticed the closet, would she have kept using me as her escape plan? For how long? Part of me wanted to wash my hands clean, block her number, and erase her from my life like it never happened. But the thought kept clawing back. I imagined myself in the shoes of that man, the one who left his coat by the door, the one who trusted that house was his safe place. If it were me, if I was the husband, would I want to know? Yes, no question. Even if it shattered me, even if it burned my whole world to the ground, I would still want the truth. The next morning, I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop like it was the only doorway to answers. What ate at me most was the lie. She had given me a fake last name. Think about that. Every conversation we had, every joke, every text, it all had a shadow hanging over it. The one piece of information I could have used to see her real life, she deliberately twisted. I opened her company's website, the one she had told me about. For a while, I scrolled aimlessly, and then I saw it. Her face listed as an employee, but the last name was different. That's when the puzzle pieces snapped together. From there, it didn't take long. Social media gave me everything. Pictures of her at company events, photos of vacations, birthdays, family barbecues, and right there beside her, in almost every big moment, her husband, a proud-looking guy, smiling wide, his arm around her like he had no reason to doubt her loyalty. Looking at those photos made my stomach turn. He had no idea. To him, his wife was just his wife. No suspicion, no shadows, just trust. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. My finger hovered over the trackpad, debating whether to shut the whole thing down and walk away. Maybe it wasn't my problem. Maybe silence was safer, but my conscience wouldn't let me. It was simple. I knew the truth. He didn't, and if I stayed silent, I'd be part of the lie. So I did the only thing I thought was right. I wrote him a message. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. I typed, "Hi, you don't know me, but I need to be honest with you. About 2 weeks ago, I slept with your wife." At the time, I didn't know she was married. She wasn't wearing a ring, and she never mentioned it. Last night, she and I met again at a bar, and she brought me back to your house. When I saw your things there, I realized what was happening and I left. I don't want to ruin your family, but I felt you deserved to know. If you want to talk, this is my number. I must have read it 50 times, second-guessing every word. Then, with my heart pounding, I hit send. It felt like throwing a stone into still water. I knew the ripples were coming, I just didn't know how far they'd spread. After sending it, I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen, waiting. Maybe he'd call me right away. Maybe he'd fire back an angry message. Maybe he'd want proof. My phone sat heavy in my hand, buzzing occasionally with other notifications. But not from him. Hours passed. Nothing. The next day, though, my phone lit up, but not from the husband. From her and her friends. It started with one text, then another, then a flood, accusations, insults. They called me a liar, a troublemaker, a homewrecker. One of her friends even wrote, "You think he's gonna believe some random dude over his wife? You're pathetic." I sat there, staring at those messages, heat rising in my chest. On the one hand, I was angry furious, actually. They were coming at me like I was the villain, like I was the one who broke vows I never even made. On the other hand, a quiet unease gnawed at me. What if they were right? What if the husband didn't believe me? What if, in trying to do the right thing, I'd only created chaos? All day, the texts kept coming. Her calling me selfish, her friends saying I was obsessed. One even threatened to block my number for her, as if I was some stalker. Meanwhile, the husband still hadn't said a word. That silence was louder than anything else. It weighed on me like a stone in my chest. Maybe he was processing. Maybe he confronted her. Maybe he was choosing denial over truth. I didn't know. That night, I sat in my apartment with nothing but the hum of the refrigerator filling the room. The glow from my phone screen lit up the darkness every few minutes with another insult or accusation. And I just sat there, numb. I wasn't proud. I wasn't relieved. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just hollow. Because here's the thing, whether he believed me or not, whether she came clean or buried the lie deeper, I had crossed a line. I had stepped into a marriage, even unknowingly, and now I had blood on my hands in a way that couldn't be washed off. I told myself I did the right thing. I repeated it like a mantra. He deserved to know. He deserved to know. He deserved to know. But the question that haunted me, the one I couldn't silence, no matter how hard I tried, was this: did I save him from a lie, or did I just burn his life to the ground? And I knew this was only the beginning. By the third day after I sent that message, I realized something unsettling. A husband's silence can be far more terrifying than any reaction. If he had exploded in anger, called me names, demanded proof, I'd at least know where I stood. But silence left me stranded in the middle of a desert, with no map and no compass. Meanwhile, my phone never stopped buzzing. Her texts kept pouring in, along with messages from her friends, who seemed to take shifts, ganging up on me like a squad determined to wear me down. At first, it was name-calling, homewrecker, pathetic. Then it turned to mockery. Who do you think you are? Just some random fling trying to insert yourself into a marriage. And finally, the threats thinly veiled, but sharp enough to pierce through the screen. Watch yourself. There are things you don't want to get mixed up in. I didn't reply. The more silent I stayed, the more frantic they became. But I knew the moment I engaged, I'd be trapped in a fight where every word I said would be twisted and used against me. Still, silence has its own price. The loneliness crept in, wrapping itself around me like a suffocating blanket. I couldn't focus at work. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes following me. Nights were the worst. I'd sit in the dark living room, the only light coming from my phone screen, waiting for some sign from her husband. I wondered if he'd read my message and handed his phone straight to her, sparking her and her friend's counterattack. Or worse, maybe he was deliberately pretending nothing happened, clinging to the illusion of a happy home. One night I didn't sleep at all. My mind kept looping. Did I do the right thing? What if I got it wrong? Maybe those clothes in her closet belonged to her brother or some relative. But then the wedding photos, the anniversary posts online, they screamed the truth I didn't want to second guess. I wanted to believe. I had acted out of principle. But with every hour of silence, that belief eroded, like sand slipping through my fingers. And then it happened. On the fourth afternoon, just as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed. A new number. I froze when I read the text. I got your message. We need to talk. No name. No signature. But I knew. It was him, right there in the parking lot. My hands started trembling. After days of waiting, the moment was finally here. But instead of relief, a knot tightened in my stomach. I had no idea what he wanted. Gratitude, answers. A confrontation. I took a deep breath and typed back, where and when. I'll be there. His reply came instantly. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. coffee shop on 5th Street. Alone. That night, I couldn't think of anything else. My mind spun out scenarios. Maybe he'd slam his fist on the table and call me a liar. Maybe he'd sit there, cold and silent, making me recount every detail. Or maybe it would come to blows. The next day dragged on forever. I couldn't get any work done. Every glance at the clock felt like a taunt, each minute stretching like an hour. By late afternoon, my chest was pounding so hard it felt like I was walking toward a battlefield. The coffee shop wasn't. Crowded, just a few people scattered around. I got there 10 minutes early and picked a table near the window. My palms were already damp with sweat. At exactly 7 o'clock, he walked in, taller than I imagined, broad-shouldered, sharp, clean-cut clothes. But it wasn't his appearance that froze me, it was his eyes. That wasn't the look of a man blindsided by betrayal. It was the look of someone who already knew too much. Someone holding back a storm. He scanned the room, spotted me, and came straight over. I stood up on instinct, halfway raising a hand like I was about to shake his... But he didn't take it. He just sat down, his voice low and steady. You, the one who texted me. I nodded. My throat was dry. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about the night at the bar, about the missing ring, the messages that followed, the night I saw the closet full of men's clothes. I spoke in one long stream, no pauses, no embellishments, no holding back. Just the facts, raw and unpolished. He never interrupted, just sat there, his eyes locked on mine. Every so often, his hands would clench into fists, then relax again. When I finally finished, the silence in that coffee shop was heavy enough to crush air. Then he let out a slow breath. His gaze didn't waver. I've had suspicions, he said quietly. For a while, she's been coming home late, always blaming work. I'd ask, and she'd laugh it off. I didn't want to believe it, until your text came. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. He kept going. I don't blame you. You didn't know. I blame her, and I needed the truth before I decide what comes next. In that moment, a strange mix hit me. Relief, because he didn't see me as the enemy, and pain because his marriage had already been cracked long before I stumbled into the picture. We stayed a little longer. He asked small, precise questions. What she wore, how often we met, whether anyone else knew. I answered all of them, as straightforward as I could. Finally, he stood up. He laid down cash for the coffee, then looked at me one last time. Thank you. Whatever happens, I appreciate your honesty. Then he walked out, leaving me at the table. My pulse still racing, but my head utterly blank. For the first time in days, I felt like I could take a full breath. But deep down, I knew one thing. This story was far from over. The night after meeting him, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The air in my apartment felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest. I replayed every word, every look from that conversation at the coffee shop. His voice, calm but edged with steel, stayed lodged in my mind. I needed the truth before I decide what comes next. Those words haunted me, because I knew whatever came next wasn't going to be simple. The following morning, I checked my phone compulsively. Nothing. No messages from him. No new wave of insults from her or her friends. The silence, once unbearable, now felt eerie, like the stillness right before a storm rolls in. At work, I barely managed to fake normalcy. My coworkers asked if I was feeling sick. I laughed it off, but the truth was, I wasn't sick. I was waiting for the hammer to drop. By noon, I caved and scrolled through her social media. She was still posting, like nothing had happened. Selfies at brunch, a picture of her latte art, a caption about self-care Sundays. The nerve of it. She posed with the same smile she'd worn when we first met, like she hadn't detonated two lives at once. And that's when it hit me. She had no idea. He hadn't confronted her yet. That realization made my stomach flip. If he was holding back, it meant he was planning something. Quiet men with storms in their eyes don't just sit on their hands. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange, my phone finally buzzed. His number again. My chest tightened as I opened the message. She doesn't know I met you. Don't say anything. I'll handle this. That was it. No explanation, no reassurance. Just a command, sharp and final. For a long time, I stared at the screen. Should I respond? Should I ask what he planned to do? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but something inside told me not to. He didn't want a conversation, he wanted silence. Compliance, so I left it alone. The days that followed felt like walking on glass. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. Every unexpected knock at my door made me tense up. I half expected her to show up screaming, or worse, for him to come back with accusations. Instead, what came was nothing until Friday night. I was home, scrolling mindlessly on my laptop, when I saw it, a new post from her account. A picture of a wine glass half full, the caption reading, "Some nights are heavier than others. But cheers to moving forward." The comments below were vague friends, sending heart emojis, little pep talks. But to me, it screamed one thing. She knew. My pulse spiked. Had he finally confronted her? Did she realize where the truth came from? I kept refreshing, waiting for more clues. 10 minutes later, another post appeared. Just a black and white photo of her hand on the table. No ring on her finger. Caption, "Endings are also beginnings." And just like that, my stomach dropped. I couldn't help but imagine the scene. Him walking in, telling her he knew. Her denying, then confessing. The fight, the shouting, maybe tears. I pictured him packing a bag, or her storming out. I wasn't there, but I could feel the wreckage spilling through the screen. I didn't sleep that night either. I lay there thinking about how I'd become part of this, about how my choices had lit the fuse. By morning, his message came. It's over. Don't contact her again. Don't contact me. It's finished. 3 short sentences. Final, brutal. And yet, I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. Because while it might have been over for him, it wasn't over for me. not inside. The weekend was long, too long. I stayed off social media, avoided downtown, even skipped a friend's party because the thought of pretending everything was fine was unbearable. But isolation only made the questions louder. Why had I gotten involved in the first place? Was I seeking something reckless, a distraction, validation? Or was it just bad luck, being in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong person? By Sunday night, I sat on my couch in the dark, a beer in hand, staring at the city lights outside my window. For the first time, I admitted it to myself. I wasn't just an innocent bystander. Yes, I didn't know she was married at first. But once I found out, I didn't walk away. Not immediately. I lingered. I let curiosity and attraction blur the lines. That was on me, and now, a marriage had collapsed, friendships had soured, and I was left with a silence that was somehow heavier than the storm. Monday morning, I thought it might finally be behind me. Back to work, back to routine. But life had other plans. Around noon, as I was grabbing coffee in the break room, one of my co-workers nudged me. "Hey, isn't that your car outside? There's someone standing by it." My stomach flipped. I rushed to the window, and there she was, her standing next to my car in the parking lot, arms crossed, sunglasses on, like a storm cloud waiting to break. I froze. My co-worker glanced at me, confused. "Friend of yours?" I forced a shrug. Something like that, but inside, panic spread like wildfire. I had two choices: pretend I didn't see her, or face it head on. And maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the guilt that had been gnawing at me. But I chose the latter when I stepped outside. The heat of the sun hit me, but the chill in her presence cut sharper. She lowered her sunglasses, and her eyes locked onto mine with a venomous calm. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice wasn't angry, not at first. It was too controlled for that. And somehow, that scared me more than yelling ever could. I glanced around, co-workers still at the window, curious. "Not here," I muttered. She smirked, like she'd already won. "Then lead the way." And just like that, I knew the storm wasn't over. Not even close. We sat across from each other in a small coffee shop tucked away down a quiet side street. I'd picked this place on purpose, away from familiar faces, away from gossip. But the silence in here only made everything heavier. Every word, every glance carried double the weight. She slid her sunglasses off and placed them on the table. Her eyes were rimmed red, the kind that told me she hadn't been sleeping. But behind the fatigue, there was still a sharpness, an edge. Her lips curled into a smirk. "You've got some nerve," she said, her voice low but cutting. "Texting my husband. Asking to meet him. Who the hell do you think you are?" My hand tightened around the warm mug in front of me. "I think he deserves the truth. That's all, the truth." She let out a dry laugh. "And what gives you the right to decide that? You're nobody in this story. Just a distraction, a mistake, and you decided to turn it into a tragedy." Her words sliced through me. I wanted to push back, to shout that she was the one who pulled me into this mess in the first place. But I took a breath, kept my voice steady. "Don't blame me. I didn't know you were married until I stumbled on it. And when I did, I tried to stop. You're the one who kept this going, trying to keep both worlds." For a split second, something flickered in her eyes, doubt, maybe even guilt. But just as quickly, she leaned back, arms crossed, smirk returning. You think you're some noble man, huh? Please, if you really didn't want this, you would have walked away the second you knew. But you didn't. You hung around. Don't pretend you're innocent. That hit harder than I wanted to admit. She wasn't wrong. I hadn't walked away right away. I let curiosity, desire, whatever it was, keep me there. She knew it, and she used it like a blade. Seeing me go quiet, she tilted her head. And now look at you, she went on, patting yourself on the back for being honest. Meanwhile, my husband doesn't trust me. My friends have turned their backs, and you sit here playing the righteous victim. My knuckles went white against the mug. Your marriage was already cracking before I ever showed up. Don't pin that on me. I'm not here to win. I'm not here to gloat. I just couldn't keep carrying a lie. The truth had to come out, even if it hurts. This time, she didn't fire back right away. Her gaze softened, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. You don't understand. Marriage isn't what it looks like from the outside. There are gaps, holes you don't know how to fill. I've been lonely in my own house for years. For the first time, I saw not just the liar, not just the manipulator, but a woman who was exhausted, lost, and yet that didn't excuse it. Loneliness doesn't justify betrayal. You could have left, I said quietly. You could have been honest. But instead, you lied. Not just to him. To me, too. Her eyes flared again. You think leaving is that easy. You think divorce doesn't come with shame, judgment, pressure from family, friends. Don't talk about what you don't know. I didn't answer. She was right about one thing. I hadn't lived that reality. I'd never carried those chains. But I still knew betrayal when I saw it. The air between us thickened. The hum of a spoon against a mug somewhere in the back was the only sound. Finally, she leaned forward, eyes locking onto mine, her voice sharp again. Listen to me. I don't care what you said to him. But if you keep dragging me into this, if you keep trying to play some kind of moral savior, we won't let you get away with it. For the first time, I didn't flinch. I'd spent too many nights lying awake, too many hours turning her threats over in my head. Now, all I felt was tired and done. I don't want anything to do with you anymore, I said firmly. But if you keep pushing this on me, if you keep using me as your excuse, I won't stay silent. We stared at each other, the tension like knives clashing dot, and then she laughed. Cold, bitter. She stood, grabbed her sunglasses, and straightened her jacket. You think truth will set you free. You'll see. Truth doesn't save anyone. It only drags everyone down. Her heels clicked against the wooden floor as she walked out, leaving the air behind her colder than before. I stayed seated, my whole body rigid, then slowly sinking into exhaustion. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. What lingered inside me wasn't victory. It wasn't closure, just emptiness. That night, I sat by my apartment window, staring out at the glittering city. The world outside kept moving, cars buzzing, lights shining, laughter spilling from bars down the block. But I felt detached, as if I'd stepped out of it all. The confrontation hadn't given me peace. It hadn't given me clarity. All it did was etch something deeper into me. In this game, no one walks away a winner. Her husband lost his trust. She lost her reputation. And me, I lost my peace. What remained were only pieces, shards scattered across the floor, impossible to put back together. We sat across from each other in a small coffee shop tucked away down a quiet side street. I'd picked this place on purpose, away from familiar faces, away from gossip. But the silence in here only made everything heavier. Every word, every glance carried double the weight. She slid her sunglasses off and placed them on the table. Her eyes were rimmed red, the kind that told me she hadn't been sleeping. But behind the fatigue, there was still a sharpness, an edge. Her lips curled into a smirk. "You've got some nerve," she said, her voice low but cutting. "Texting my husband, asking to meet him. Who the hell do you think you are?" My hand tightened around the warm mug in front of me. "I think he deserves the truth. That's all the truth." She let out a dry laugh. "And what gives you the right to decide that? You're nobody in this story. Just a distraction. A mistake. And you decided to turn it into a tragedy." Her words sliced through me. I wanted to push back, to shout that she was the one who pulled me into this mess in the first place. But I took a breath, kept my voice steady. "Don't blame me. I didn't know you were married until I stumbled on it. And when I did, I tried to stop. You're the one who kept this going, trying to keep both worlds." For a split second, something flickered in her eyes, doubt, maybe even guilt. But just as quickly, she leaned back, arms crossed, smirk returning. "You think you're some noble man, huh? Please, if you really didn't want this, you would have walked away the second you knew. But you didn't. You hung around. Don't pretend you're innocent." That hit harder than I wanted to admit. She wasn't wrong. I hadn't walked away right away. I let curiosity, desire, whatever it was, keep me there. She knew it, and she used it like a blade. Seeing me go quiet, she tilted her head. "And now look at you," she went on, "patting yourself on the back for being honest. Meanwhile, my husband doesn't trust me. My friends have turned their backs, and you sit here playing the righteous victim." My knuckles went white against the mug. "Your marriage was already cracking before I ever showed up. Don't pin that on me. I'm not here to win. I'm not here to gloat. I just couldn't keep carrying a lie. The truth had to come out, even if it hurts." This time, she didn't fire back right away. Her gaze softened, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. "You don't understand. Marriage isn't what it looks like from the outside. There are gaps, holes you don't know how to fill. I've been lonely in my own house for years. For the first time, I saw not just the liar, not just the manipulator, but a woman who was exhausted, lost. And yet, that didn't excuse it. Loneliness doesn't justify betrayal." "You could have left," I said quietly. "You could have been honest. But instead, you lied. Not just to him, to me too." Her eyes flared again. "You think leaving is that easy. You think divorce doesn't come with shame, judgment, pressure from family, friends. Don't talk about what you don't know." I didn't answer. She was right about one thing. I hadn't lived that reality. I'd never carried those chains. But I still knew betrayal when I saw it. The air between us thickened. The hum of a spoon against a mug somewhere in the back was the only sound. Finally, she leaned forward, eyes locking onto mine, her voice sharp again. "Listen to me. I don't care what you said to him, but if you keep dragging me into this, if you keep trying to play some kind of moral savior, won't let you get away with it." For the first time, I didn't flinch. I'd spent too many nights lying awake, too many hours turning her threats over in my head. Now, all I felt was tired and done. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore," I said firmly. "But if you keep pushing this on me, if you keep using me as your excuse, I won't stay silent." We stared at each other, the tension like knives clashing, and then she laughed. Cold, bitter, she stood, grabbed her sunglasses, and straightened her jacket. You think truth will set you free? You'll see. Truth doesn't save anyone. It only drags everyone down. Her heels clicked against the wooden floor as she walked out, leaving the air behind her colder than before. I stayed seated, my whole body rigid, then slowly sinking into exhaustion. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. What lingered inside me wasn't victory. It wasn't closure, just emptiness. That night, I sat by my apartment window, staring out at the glittering city. The world outside kept moving, cars buzzing, lights shining, laughter spilling from bars down the block. But I felt detached, as if I'd stepped out of it all. The confrontation hadn't given me peace. It hadn't given me clarity. All it did was etch something deeper into me. In this game, no one walks away a winner. Her husband lost his trust. She lost her reputation, and me. I lost my peace. What remained were only pieces, shards, scattered across the floor, impossible to put back together. That night, after walking out of the cafe, I thought honesty would free me. Instead, it chained me tighter. My apartment felt foreign, like I was just a visitor in my own life. The next evening, my phone buzzed. A message from him. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., Riverside Park. My stomach knotted. A late meeting in a near-empty park didn't sound like closure. It sounded like judgment. When I arrived, the air was cool, the lamps casting long shadows across the path. He showed up minutes later, taller than I remembered. His eyes carried no rage, just the quiet weight of a man who'd seen too much. She denies everything, he said. His voice was steady, but his jaw tightened. She swore, you're lying, that you're trying to ruin us. I steadied my breath. You don't owe me trust, but I told you what happened. I didn't come here to destroy you. For a moment, silence. Then a laugh soared hollow. Destroy me. I've been living in ruins for years. I just refused to look at the rubble. He turned to me, his voice dropping. The truth isn't shocking, it's familiar. I've felt it in her late nights, her excuses, the way she looked past me. You didn't tell me something new. You confirmed what I already knew but couldn't admit. We sat on a bench. He talked about his marriage, the early love, the struggles, the silence that grew like mold in the walls of their house. He confessed the hardest part wasn't betrayal, but realizing he'd chosen denial over confrontation. Finally, he faced me again. If she reaches out, don't respond. Don't argue, don't comfort her. Let me face her alone. This is between husband and wife, not husband, wife, and stranger. I nodded slowly. You have my word. He rose, extended his hand. His grip was firm, almost desperate. Thank you for the truth, he said. But don't mistake it for a gift. Truth is heavy. It doesn't set people free. It forces them to carry it. And with that, he walked into the shadows, shoulders squared but heavy, leaving me on the bench with nothing but the echo of his words. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The city hummed outside my window, alive with laughter and traffic. But inside me was only silence, the kind that feels like a storm waiting too. After that meeting in Riverside, I thought I would feel lighter. At least I had spoken the truth to her husband. No more guessing, no more half-lies. But when I walked back into my apartment, into the familiar dark, I realized something else. Truth doesn't free you, it just opens another dead end. The days that followed were eerily quiet. No texts from him, no threats from her friends, not even a word from her. That silence should have been a relief, but instead it pressed down on me like a suffocating night after work. I wandered the streets, hoping the noise of the city would drown out my thoughts. Neon signs flickered, car horns blared, strangers brushed past me, but it only made me feel smaller, more alone. Sometimes I swore I could feel eyes on me, a shadow trailing just a step behind. At night I sat by the window, staring at the traffic below. More than once I thought about disappearing, turning off my phone, locking my door, leaving town. But even if I ran, the truth would still exist. It would live in her eyes, in his silence, in the memory of every choice I had made. Then one evening, while I was half asleep on the couch, my phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. My chest tightened. I opened it. "You think you're free?" I froze. Short, cold, no name. But I knew instantly it was her. Minutes later, another one came. "You told him everything. You ruined it. Don't think you'll get peace." I paced the apartment, heart pounding. A part of me wanted to fire back, to scream that she had started this, that I never wanted it to go this far. But I remembered her husband's warning. If she reaches out, don't respond. So I didn't. I threw the phone down. But she didn't stop. Message after message, marking, threatening, pleading. She shifted tones like she was trying on masks, desperate for a reaction. That night, I didn't sleep. Every buzz of a new message felt like a knife twisting deeper. Finally, I shut the phone off, sat in the dark, and listened to my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. The next day at work, co-workers noticed my bloodshot eyes. I brushed it off with a smile. How could I explain I was trapped in someone else's domestic war, haunted by words on a screen? All afternoon, a question looped in my mind. Did I do the right thing? I had chosen honesty, but instead of freedom, it felt like I'd lit a fuse. One evening, I passed a flower shop. The scent of roses drifted out, pulling me back to the early days when she was just a smile across a table, a glass of wine, a careless laugh. I stood there for a long time, wondering, if I hadn't walked into that bar that night, would I still have peace? A week went by with no word from her husband, but she didn't stop. Some nights she texted, "I miss you." Other nights it was, "Don't make me come find you." I finally understood this wasn't about love anymore. This was a psychological war. And like it or not, I was the enemy. One night, I stared at myself in the mirror. Hollow cheeks, dark circles, eyes I barely recognized. I was becoming a shadow of myself, orbiting around a story that was never mine to begin with. I opened my notebook and wrote one line. This has to end. I didn't know how, whether by confronting her again, speaking with him, or leaving everything behind. But I knew one thing for certain. If I stayed on this path, I'd lose myself completely. Outside, the city buzzed with lights and noise. Inside me, only darkness spread, and I realized this was only the beginning of the shadows closing in. A week passed, and I thought things might finally settle down. But silence, I learned, is often just the prelude to a storm. That night, I left the office late. The building was empty, humming only with the low drone of the air conditioning and the harsh white of fluorescent lights. As I walked down the glass corridor, Something in the reflection made me stop, behind my own silhouette. I swore I saw a shadow flicker outside. I spun around. Nothing, just the city below, traffic moving as usual. I shook my head, telling myself it was exhaustion, and headed toward the parking lot. But when I opened my car door, a chill cut through me. On the back seat lay a white envelope. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, words scrawled in messy handwriting. Don't think your silence means I don't know what you're doing. Be careful. No name, no number. But I didn't need either to know who it came from. That night I didn't sleep. I locked every door, drew the curtains, sat in the dark listening to the smallest sounds. My phone buzzed again and again on my texts. Some taunting, some threatening, some just 3 dots, like she was breathing down my neck, waiting for me to crack. I remembered her husband's warning, if she reaches out, don't respond. But was silence enough? Or was my silence driving her further into madness? The next day at work, my co-workers asked if I was okay. I laughed it off, but how could I explain that I was being hunted by someone who was once a lover, now a tormentor? At lunch, my phone rang. A strange number. I hesitated, then picked up. Her voice froze me in place. You're ignoring my messages. Think you can just disappear? I don't want to talk anymore, I said, trying to steady my voice. Not talk anymore. She laughed high-pitched, sharp. You wreck everything and then walk away like it never happened. You think it's that easy? I was about to hang up when her tone dropped, almost a whisper. If you turn your back, you won't be the only one to pay the price. My stomach dropped. Did she mean me? Or her own family? That afternoon, I sat at my desk, staring blankly at my screen. I thought about reaching out to her husband, telling him about the messages, the threats, even the note in my car. But would he believe me? Or think I was just stirring the chaos deeper? That night, I drafted an email to him, pouring out everything. My hands shook as I typed. When I reached the final line, I hovered over the send button and stopped. Instead, I erased the draft. On a blank page, I wrote 3 words: I must disappear. The thought haunted me. I even looked up bus tickets, cheap flights, places far away where no one knew my name. I imagined myself walking out of the city with a suitcase, starting over. But logic pulled me back. I had a job, friends, a life I had built. I couldn't just vanish because of one mistake. The next morning, I tried to take control. I blocked her number, deleted every message, emptied my inbox. I promised myself, she's not stepping one more foot into my life. But life doesn't bend to promises. A week later, at the supermarket, I saw her. A flash of red dress at the end of the aisle. Slim figure. Quick steps. My heart stopped. She turned, and our eyes locked. A smile flickered across her lips, not of love, not even of anger, but of a predator who's found her prey. I abandoned my cart and walked fast toward the exit. Behind me, the click of her heels echoed measured, deliberate, closing in. Out in the parking lot, I scrambled into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. Through the rearview mirror, I saw her standing there under the yellow glow of the lamps. Her eyes were dark, unblinking, piercing straight through the glass. I drove off, pulse hammering, palms slick against the wheel, and in that moment I knew this was never a love story. It was a war, and I had already crossed the line too far to ever turn back.